Here are my raspberry bushes. As you can see, some of them have started to ripen. So I'm thinking this is the perfect time to make a Clover Club. Greetings, cocktail aficionados. It's John Moser with another edition of Cocktails Out of Quarantine. And today, it's true, we're going to make a Clover Club. This is a classic drink. We don't know, as is the case with many cocktails, we don't know exactly when it was invented. We know it was somewhere between 1882 and 1917. Now, how do we know this? We know that the name comes for a group called the Clover Club. This was an elite gathering of businessmen and lawyers and writers. One of its members was, in fact, W.B. Yeats. And they met at the Bellevue Stratford Hotel in Philadelphia. We know that the group formed in 1882, so you can't name a drink after something that doesn't exist yet. We know that it was definitely invented before 1917 because the first time that the recipe was known to be in print was in a book called The Ideal Bartender that came out in 1917. So somewhere in that framework, again, we know it was invented at the Bellevue Stratford, which is where the Clover Club met. We know that, in the 1920s, it kind of went into a decline, but it's gotten hip again, like a lot of these classic pre-Prohibition drinks. As a matter of fact, there's a bar in Brooklyn that's even called the Clover Club. So this is a raspberry drink. In some ways, it's like a gin fizz, and it has egg white, so that might turn some of you off. Personally, I think egg white adds a great texture and taste to a drink. So if you're willing to stick with me and give it a try, then watch and I'll show you how to make it. So the Clover Club is a gin-based drink. We have this Steinhager dry gin, which I think is excellent. Some dry vermouth. And look, the bottle's dusty. That shows how often I use dry vermouth. We have, of course, raspberries. These come right from my bushes. Some of them are pretty, some of them are not. I'm going to sort out the pretty ones from the not pretty ones. The pretty ones I'm going to use as garnish. The others are going to get mashed up to make a raspberry syrup. Raspberry syrup, look, you can get fancy and macerate some berries and boil them and boil some sugar and water. Fortunately, there's a cheat. Look, if you're gonna make your own, you're probably gonna end up with a lot more of the stuff than you're gonna need. So if the Clover Club becomes your new favorite drink, fine, you'll have a ton of it. But, I vary what I drink. For example, when I showed you some weeks ago how to make the zombie, I ended up with a huge amount of Don's Mix. Now, how many zombies am I likely to have within the next few weeks? Not a whole lot. So I'm going to go with the cheat. Raspberries and simple syrup. We're gonna need some lemon juice, and finally, the white of one raw egg. So here's how we do it. One of our ingredients, as I say, is egg white. So we need to separate this egg. It's not all that difficult. You just tap it, make sure you tap it and crack it somewhere near the middle. Open it carefully. And then we transfer the yolk back and forth from eggshell to eggshell. And in the process, the egg white drops out. Oops, I got a tiny bit of yolk in there. That's not a big problem. I'm okay with that. For this one, you're gonna start with a dry shaker, no ice in there. And we're going to put a ½ ounce of simple syrup in the bottom. Dump that in. And we are going to add to that a few raspberries. As I said, I'm going to separate out the ones that I think are pretty because I want to use those for a garnish. And then I'm going to dump, it's probably like half a dozen of them. That's probably even more than I need. It'll have a nice raspberry flavor to it. And then we get our muddler and smash that up good. We're gonna get a nice, sweet raspberry mix that I think is going to taste fantastic. Yeah, that is good enough. To that mix, we are going to add 1.5 ounces of the gin. Half an ounce of gin, or 1.5 ounces rather. Half an ounce of dry vermouth. Half an ounce of freshly squeezed lemon juice. Time to get my squeezer out. And we easily get that out of 1/2. Pour that in. And that goes in with, of course, the raspberry syrup or raspberry simple syrup mix that we have in the bottom. Now, we add the egg white. And I think I managed to keep the yolk from getting in, that little piece of yolk that was in there. And we are going to start by shaking this for about 20 seconds or so without ice. And then we're going to add ice and do the same thing. And what this will do is emulsify the egg white and give it a really nice creamy texture. And we pour this into a coupe glass. Ooh, look how pretty that is. And now for our garnish. Said we had a few raspberries that look particularly nice. I'm going to take this cocktail pick and I'm going to spear 4 of them and put that right on the top. Wow, that is beautiful. This, folks, is the Clover Club. I hope you make one and I hope you enjoy it. Get past the egg white thing. Like I say, it really adds a great dimension to the drink. So, here's to you. Cheers. See you next time.